LSU at Ole Miss in Oxford. This is a game at 6 Eastern on ESPN. The line is somewhere around 2.5 or 3 favoring LSU on the road, mind you. LSU coming off a game where they took Arkansas to the wire in Baton Rouge at night. KJ Jefferson gave them issues. LSU found a way to get it done. This is a trajectory-setting game for LSU because if you win this game, you look at the path the rest of the way, and you definitely got to kind of walk the straight and narrow a little bit, but you start to think about that game in Tuscaloosa where you could roll in there with one loss. And that game could very well be for the SEC West. Think about that. For LSU now, or excuse me, for LSU, for Ole Miss, if you lose this game, the climb to Atlanta becomes very difficult. You have 2 SEC losses, and you've lost to the top 2 teams in the West, and that would be a thing where you start to look at Lane Kiffin and say, all right, hey, what are we doing here? Like, you sit down and kind of have that DTR, determine the relationship. Ole Miss, I mean, power to them. They don't want to be a team that just sits at third in the SEC West every year. They want to go and beat Alabama. They want to go and beat LSU. And with that being the expectation, the conversation around Lane Kiffin, like I just said, I don't know if the seat becomes hot. I think that even feels a little bit of a reach. But I do think that noise in Oxford, Mississippi cranks up a good bit. So we'll see what happens there. And this game will have a pretty sizable impact on how we're talking about him this time next week. Now, the big matchup for me, LSU's defense, especially in that second level, the linebackers, the Harold Perkins, the Weeks, like guys like that against these Ole Miss playmakers in space. Because Ole Miss, the way that they're designed offensively with Lane Kiffin and company, they're going to use tempo. That's the first part. But also they're going to do a lot pre-snap to try and create matchups to where they get their guys the ball in space. And the thing that worries me if I'm LSU, that was a lot of what Arkansas did last week to you, and you didn't manage that great. Is Jaxson Dart, KJ Jefferson when it comes to running the football? No, but I promise you, he can hurt you with his legs. He will make that a factor if you're not in position. And Ole Miss has some guys that will hurt you in space. Dayton Wade, he's a beast. Jordan Watkins, he's a beast. They're guys that have very much so home run ability if you don't take advantage of things on your P's and Q's. And for LSU too, I mean, Brian Kelly talked about it in his press conference the other day. They were not necessarily extremely assignment sound. I don't think that'll continue week in to week out for LSU, but even so, man, like this is a team that will hurt you if you're not aligned for success and you don't know what you're doing with those pre-snap movements. And pre-snap movement as an offense, just as a whole, for what Ole Miss is going to do, serves 2 purposes. One, it helps the quarterback get a good gauge for what the coverage is for the defense. That's the first part. But the second piece is it kind of makes you hit the reset button if you're a defense, because anytime the receiver motions from one side to the other, you have to check, you have to communicate. And as you're doing that, it becomes more difficult to just play ball. Like it forces you to kind of think a little bit more, unfortunately. And when you're thinking on the football field, like things may be going wrong, you got to just know it. And LSU, as of last week, did not prove that they were in sync enough to just know it and just play football. They got great athletes, they got great personnel, but if they can't capitalize on their opportunities defensively and they don't play that pre-snap motion right, going to be a long afternoon. For reasons I just said, Ole Miss has the guys to hurt you. Now, the other matchup I'm watching in this game, Jayden Daniels, obviously the LSU quarterback, against Suntarine Perkins, linebacker for Ole Miss. Suntarine Perkins, a guy we were really high on here at On 3. He's a freshman playing for Ole Miss, and he was used last week in large part to spy Jalen Milroe, the quarterback of Alabama. Now, Jalen Milroe and Jayden Daniels, similar skill set in the sense that they're both really good at running the football. Ole Miss understood that and said, Suntarine, you're a really good athlete. We want you to just spy him and be responsible for him. So if he runs left, you run left. If he goes to the bench and gets a drink of water, you go with him. Kind of that sentiment. And that's going to be crucial for this game because LSU's offense in every way is built on running the football. But when they really get rolling, when they're really dangerous, is when they're multiple running the football. And what I mean by that is that zone read option gets going, and you don't know if Logan Diggs has it. You don't know if Jayden Daniels has it because they have success with both of those. And success with Jayden Daniels running the football starts with how Suntarine Perkins is able to play him, because I think that he will be assigned to Jayden Daniels if I had to guess right now. So if that run game gets going, well, then the whole thing kind of starts to roll downhill, right? Then the safeties have to figure out what they're doing. You have to be a little bit more aggressive on the back end and run support. And then you get one-on-one matchups for this LSU receiving corps. Credit Jayden Daniels, credit LSU, man. That was the question going into the season. Can they be vertical throwing the football? Will he unhitch the wagon? Will he take shots deep and trust his guys? Last couple of weeks against Mississippi State and Arkansas, Jayden Daniels has uncorked it. Brian Thomas, absolute stud, made some huge plays against Arkansas. He's getting man-to-man coverage. He's running by his defender, throwing the hand up Randy Moss style, saying, feed me. And Jayden Daniels, credit to him, he fed him. Malik Neighbors, same deal. If you don't want to honor him with the safety, or if you can't honor him with the safety because of how LSU runs the football, big plays and good things are going to happen for the Tigers. So, to explore the other side of that scenario, let's say Suntarine Perkins is able to play Jayden Daniels, and you just feel confident as Pete Golding saying, hey, we know that our guy is going to take care of your guy. Well, then you can pay more attention to just the pure running back run part of LSU's offense. And if you feel good about that, well, then the secondary, they get to be more conservative and pay better attention to the playmakers of LSU. So this whole thing kind of works together in harmony for how this thing could shake out for both sides of that equation. Now, the big thing for LSU defensively, can they get after Jaxson Dart? We talked about playing in space. We talked about pre-snap movement. That's going to be paramount. Don't get it twisted. But I think Jaxson Dart deserves a ton of credit for the way that he's elevated his game within Lane Kiffin's offense. Like, he is now a quarterback that you cannot just sit back and say, Jaxson Dart beat us. Like, maybe that's the way you want to live because Quinshon Judkins is one of the best backs in the country, especially when he's healthy. But for Jaxson Dart, like, if you just want to sit back and play, I think he's going to pick you apart. And so I think much like last year, this is a game where we have to see Harold Perkins cut it loose a little bit. Like, I understand LSU wants to kind of manage him and they want to think about his future in the NFL, but like, this is a game where you have to apply pressure to Jaxson Dart. You have to make him see ghosts. You have to rattle him. You have to get after him in some way, shape, or form. Because the secondary for LSU is an issue. It is. Like, you can't just play honest with them and expect to win. We saw that against Arkansas too. Even with a touchdown that got called back, LSU's not great one-on-one. It's not the monstars that Florida State had against you in week one of the season, but still, man, Ole Miss has the playmakers to where if you let Jaxson Dart play his game and Ole Miss run their offense and you just kind of want to play not to lose defensively, you're going to get exposed. You're not going to win those matchups as consistently as you need to win this football game on the road. So again, Harold Perkins, I think he's the key in this one. I think you got to cut him loose. I think you got to scheme it up for him defensively and allow him to do what he does and be special. It might be a game where you need a game-breaking forced fumble from Harold Perkins. It might be a game where you need this defense to find a way to force a turnover or two to win, because I think Ole Miss is that good offensively. Now, I think the LSU offense has found a new gear. I really do. I think Jayden Daniels elevating his game from last year to this year. Last year, you were hoping for some things. When the LSU had the football, you were hoping they could run the football effectively and maybe get a couple of passes here and there. This year, when LSU gets the football and Jayden Daniels drops back to pass, you're like, oh boy, y'all about to find out right now. Y'all done messed around and found out. Like, that's kind of the feel with what LSU's been able to do the last 2 weeks. You have a new sense of confidence in this offense with Mike Denbrock and Jayden Daniels taking the next step. I think the defense for LSU is going to be timely. And when I say timely, I don't mean you wreak havoc the whole game. I don't mean that you force 3 turnovers and you force Jaxson Dart to just have a horrible day at the office. I think Ole Miss is going to get theirs. I think they're going to score some points. I think playing at home helps them. I think Lane Kiffin is one of the best offensive minds in college football. I think they do get theirs to a degree. But I think in the fourth quarter, I think on a critical fourth down, you're able to make the plays required to allow you to win this football game. So I think the final score, close, hard-fought back and forth, but I think LSU wins this football game 31-27. So we like LSU to win. We like LSU to cover. Again, that conversation around Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin becomes a little less comfortable. I'm not buying the hot seat talk just yet, but I do think you kind of get a little bit more serious and say, okay, what are we going to do here, huh? What is the reality for us? What is our ceiling with Lane Kiffin as our head coach? Not hot seat talk, but there is some pressure talk there, in my opinion. I think for LSU, right back on track. That game against Florida State, you buried the tape a couple weeks ago. This game hopefully makes you feel differently and forget about that one if you're an LSU Tiger fan. that's the way you'd like to feel coming out of this game. So enormous impact for the SEC West in that one, high stakes, and that's going to really shape the race in the SEC and where things stand when LSU goes to play Alabama. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.